Welcome back. Let's hop right in with our three standard questions. Who you, what's due, and why?
Well, I'm Richard Horvitz. I am an actor. I have been since I was 10 years old, so going on 50 years now. I started as an on-camera actor at the age of 10, and I'm mostly known for the past 30 or so years as a voiceover actor for shows like Invader Zim, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, lots of other ones, The Angry Beavers, and currently I am on a show called Hell of a Boss, which I'm on, and I actually direct it, voice direct it, as well as star in it with an amazing cast and crew. And I'm currently voice directing a new show to come out soon called Has Been Hotel.
You're voice directing Has Been?
Yes.
And, oh my God.
I'm sorry, I'll geek out about that later. Go on.
Yes. And let's see. Why? Why? Because I love it. Why? Because I've been a fan of entertainment and performing since I was 5 years old. I was in love with television. I was one of those kids that was sat in front of a television set at a very early age and grew up on a lot of old shows, but they weren't old to me, but they are now. Get Smart, Tom Jones from England, as my mother used to call it, and the Flip Wilson Show. And I just knew at that age, that's what I wanted to do. And I've pursued it ever since.
Sounds pretty similar to my own origin story. So we'll see how it goes on my end.
Yes.
Is there anything you're working on or have coming out soon that you want to tell our audience about at the moment?
Well, season 2 of Hell of a Boss comes out, I believe, July 30th. So season 2, Hell of a Boss, is coming out on YouTube. And I got some video games that are coming out that I can't really talk about, but you'll enjoy those. And currently still running up the game charts is Psychonauts 2.
Yeah.
And also Ratchet and Clank: A Rift Apart, of which I'm also in that one. Nice. And I'm on Loud House. I'm currently on Loud House quite a bit. I play Morpheus and Rodney. So that's all coming out, or it's out and still coming.
As usual, you're getting around. I mean, it is kind of hard to find animation that doesn't include your voice at some point. It's like you get something incredibly entertaining, and then you don't expect Warburton or Kenny to show up.
Yes, thank you. Yeah,
you're one of the greats over here.
Thank you.
All right. So, like you said, you started out pretty early as a kid doing commercials and modeling and entertainment. So, did you always know you wanted to be a performer, or what was the exact moment where this is the one?
I just always knew that I wanted to be on TV. That's what I really wanted to do. I wanted to, because when you're a kid, you think the worlds really exist. Like on the show Get Smart, you really thought that Max and 99 were married. So I always wanted to kind of disappear into those shows. But when I did a lot of TV when I was young. I started out as a hand model for a toy company back in the days of Star Wars, and it was knockoff Star Wars toys. Like one was called Kent and his Cosmic Cruiser, and it was my hands that were the close-up of the kid playing with the toy.
Cool.
Yeah, that was fun. But even though I did a lot of commercials as a small child, from 10 years old to about 13, I was cast in a musical called Oliver, and it was an equity production, and it starred Shani Wallace, who played the original Nancy in the 1968 musical movie, Academy Award-winning movie, Oliver. And it was directed by the Academy Award-winning choreographer of the movie, Anna White, and it starred Dick Shawn and Stubby Kaye and a bunch of people from my parents' era. But if you're fans of those things, look them up, you'll know them. If you ever saw the original Guys and Dolls with Frank Sinatra and Marlon Brando, Stubby Kaye played nicely in Guys and Dolls. So I knew very young that that's what I wanted to do.
Well, your bio and presenting evidence says that you're a bit of a theater nerd and with musicals.
I'm a huge theater nerd.
What draws you to stage versus screen or voiceover performances?
What draws me to stage is that it's all, not to use an acting term, because I tend to, stray away from acting terms. But in theater, you're in the moment right then and there. You're experiencing it. You're your senses are all alive. If you go up on a line or something happens, you have to, you know, be in that moment. And you get instant audience recognition. So it's just so much fun to disappear into the stories. Musicals in particular are my favorite. I just got back from New York, where I saw my friend Alex, who plays Beetlejuice and is also a hell of a boss. Yeah, he's also
cool.
A hell of a boss. Yeah. So the other things, you know, I love voiceover. Film, I love the product of film, but the time to shoot it just takes so long. It's so much time. You know, you've heard it a million times. It's a lot of sit around and wait. But theater, you're active and you're moving. So that's probably why I love theater so much.
If something goes wrong, you just got to roll with it. It's like scripted improv. Like you have to roll with the punches, but also you kind of have something to do.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
It's always good to, like, once you get in the zone on stage, you stay in the zone because
yeah. And the funny thing about theater is that, you know, you could have a cold or something and you feel horrible and you know you have to go out and perform, and then you go out there, and the minute you go out there, boom, you're on, you're playing, and then you come off stage like, oh my God, that was great. And because, oh, you couldn't even tell you had a cold. And then you're like, oh yeah, I forgot I had a cold. It's just...
We are running on show health 99% of the time over here.
Exactly.
It's just like, all right, and cut, we got it. Cool. Get knocked down.
Yes.
Just pause the song there.
Theater in the time of COVID has been really challenging because when it first hit, when we were all like, you know, on lockdown, we could only do like Zoom readings of plays. Yeah. Just not the same. And now luckily we're able to go back to the theater, which has been very nice.
Yeah. I have seen plenty of creative ways that people have, like, tried to deal with such performances during the pandemic. But how did you go about certain parts of your career during this whole thing?
So I was very fortunate because I have a home studio. I built my office, which I'm in now, and I also have a studio that's part of my office off to the right here. And I built that 20 some odd years ago because many people don't know, but I went to record engineering school when I was young. And back then it was to record albums. I wanted to record albums. It was just kind of the transition between albums and digital. And so when I built this office, I said, I'm going to put a recording studio in here, which I did. And luckily I was all ready to start recording when we started recording from home, because all of us are still recording from home for the most part. Every now and then there'll be a session, you know, on the other side of the hill here in Los Angeles. That means from the valley to the west side. Yeah. And so that's how I did it. In fact, I had, you know, even during the time of COVID, I directed all of Hell of a Boss from this camera right here where we're sitting. I directed from here. All my actors were all over the country. And when I had to record, I was in my own booth. And that's just how we do it during COVID.
Dang. I mean, I figured with like the clarity you got with Hell of a Boss, among other things, I figured you had to have some sort of like recording stuff at your own home. But man, that's a really good setup. Yeah, it's a good setup.
Basically, there's not to do a commercial, but Source Connect is what I use, and I love Source Connect. It's, you know, basically. Even though I built a studio, I have processors and everything that I have a mixing board, and I go through, you know, I could add compression if I wanted, or gate or whatever, but we don't, because Source Connect gives us a clean feed. And so if it was processed in any way, Nickelodeon or the other companies I record for wouldn't be able to change my record settings, because they would have been processed through my own processor. So Source Connect allows you to just record the raw dry tracks, and that makes it feel like all of us are in the same room and on the same kind of microphone, which is amazing to me.
Maybe we should invest in that, because I got a lot of respect for anybody who can work with audio, because it is the biggest pain in the ass of this entire process.
Except for lighting.
Well,
lighting is always a problem, but well, believe it or not, audio has come so far, because back in the days when I was studying engineering, you had to do, you know, patching which is forever. It's like if you ever look behind where your TVs and everything, you see that spaghetti of wires. That's what patching is, and you got to patch, left to out, in, out, and you got to always keep track of where your signal's going, and that was the most difficult thing ever. Now everything's a plug-in.
Recording audio like you're defusing a bomb.
Yes, exactly. So now everything is a plug-in on your workstation. So like I use Pro Tools, and Pro Tools has a plug-in for every single processor you need.
Well, circling back to the like on-stage theater production and all that, have you ever done any Shakespeare?
Have I done any Shakespeare? I've not done Shakespeare. I've done Shakespeare for auditions, like when I was auditioning to go to USC Bachelor of Fine Arts program. I did do Shakespeare for my auditions, but I've never done Shakespeare on stage. I've not really done a lot of the classics. I mostly do contemporary or musicals.
All right. Well, with a voice like yours, I think you'd make a pretty good Puck or Ariel.
Yes, very much so. I agree with you. It was like Mickey Rooney as Puck in the old Midsummer's Night Dream on you can see it on certain classic movies now.
On the subject of musicals, which musicals do you always wish you could have done?
Well, without a doubt, Jesus Christ Superstar is my favorite musical of all time. Nice. I would want to play both Judas and Jesus. Those are two of the best roles in musical theater history. Well, I would love to play Valjean in Les Mis. I would probably more than likely be cast as Javert. But those two, and I love West Side Story, even though, even though I'm not really right for any. I mean, I probably would have been like, I could have been, like action in West Side Story, but I love West Side Story too. Oh, and Hamilton. I would love to play the king. That's what I'd really like to do.
I think you build upon all that awesomeness with Weird Al doing the Hamilton polka, because of course.
I've worked with Weird Al. He's a great guy.
Damn.
That's the second one.
He was on the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy with us on like 3 or 4 episodes.
Damn. We recently talked to Jeff Swampy Marsh of Phineas and Ferb and Milo Murphy's Law. So that's 2 people we'll talk to who have been involved with Al. Yeah,
Al loves to do animation.
Yeah.
We tried to get him for one of our other shows, but he wasn't available, so that was kind of a bummer. He's got his tour that he's doing right now anyway. So
I'll be waiting for him to show up as a demon overlord in one of the future episodes.
Yeah, I don't think he will, but
I mean, hey, if Norman Reedus got on the show,
that's on it. Yeah. We've had a lot of really good guest stars on the show.
Yeah. But I promised myself I'd circle back around to that towards the end of the interview. I'll try not to nerd out too much on it. So you went to UCLA. Did you mentioned something about audio engineering? Did you major or minor at all in theater or performance?
So I was a theater arts major, and back then it was kind of the days when classes were not readily available because it really started to get overpopulated. So 4 years of education turned into 5 years. You were like, 5 years. But I majored in theater arts, and they were designed to get you in and out in 4 years. I, however, only made it very briefly. I dropped out of UCLA because I started working on a television series back in the mid 80s called Safe at Home. And it was on Ted Turner's Superstation, WTBS, now just TBS. But it was on WTBS, and we did 105 episodes in 3 years, which is like a ridiculous workload. But it was huge. But I always thought that I would go back to UCLA because all I did was I say I dropped out. I really didn't. I took a leave of absence and then planned on coming back. But then after I did Safe at Home, I started going into film work, and I did a movie called Summer School with Mark Harmon and Kirstie Alley, and directed by Carl Reiner. And from there, thank you. And from there, I did another number of movies. I did a lot of teen films in the '80s. One called How I Got into College. Also, Tom Kenny was in that. And we didn't even know each other until later in the '90s when we met Nickelodeon. But so I just kept going further and further away from college. And then I got into voiceover, and my career thankfully has been a great journey. I always refer to myself as a journeyman in this business, because you start out to be an Oscar-winning actor. Then you go, maybe I'll be an Emmy-winning actor. And you go, okay, maybe I'll just get a series for 6 years or 7 years. And then, okay, I'll do a play.
Maybe Golden Globes, maybe.
Yeah. And then after a while, years go by. And like I said, I'm going on 50 years almost that I've been a union member of SAG for almost 50 years. You go, wow, it wasn't exactly the path that I thought it would be, but I'm still here. And so that just, gratitude, kind of sets in with age. But I never got back to UCLA. And my thoughts were, if I go back to UCLA, I was only majoring in theater arts, and I was already doing what it was I was going to do when I graduated anyway. So life takes many turns. My youngest son of 3 just finished his first year of college. My other 2 have already graduated. And with that first year, I told him, you now are more educated. I said, I am now the least educated member of this family.
So circling back to Carl Reiner, that was one of your first films. So what was it like to be directed by one of the greatest sketch comedians of all time?
So Carl was exceptionally kind. And right up until his last days, I was friends with Carl. We would socialize. And his nephew, George Shapiro, who was the producer of Summer School, and it's Shapiro West, who also produced the Seinfeld show, and they represented Jerry until George's passing just a couple of weeks ago, as a matter of fact. Carl was the kindest person in the world. He let us improvise up a storm while we were shooting. And the funny thing about Carl was, here's this, legend of comedy and TV and film. And whenever I would see him, the first thing he would ask me is, how are you? Are you a good dad? Are you being a good father? That was the most important thing to him, because family was more important to Carl than anything in the world, even including his career.
Yeah. Truly a blessed memory.
Yeah, very much so. It was sad when he passed away, because I really thought he was going to make the 101 is what I gave him, but he just shy. So
and like in his memory, and then also on a previous subject, you have done sketch comedy in the past. What drew you to that?
So a lot of people think of me as an improviser, and I am an improviser when it comes to the work I do, particularly in animation. I improvised up a storm, especially on a show like Angry Beavers, which was a lot of improv, and I was allowed to do a lot of improv on Billy and Mandy. I've been very fortunate to work with creators like Mitch Shower of the Angry Beavers, Jodan Vasquez of Invader Zim, or Maxwell Adams on The Grim Adventures, or Vivian Medrano on Hell of a Boss. And they all know that that's my thing, that I just, once I'm going, I'm playing and I improvise. And they usually let me go, and they'll stop me. They'll say, okay, we got enough, or, I like that, and it's just a very collaborative process. In regards to sketch comedy, that I've always just been a sketch performer. I started doing sketch comedy, in camps like everybody else, in like summer camp. And then I joined up with Fred Willard, who I worked with for close to 20 years. We did the Tonight Show together. We did Jimmy Kimmel together twice. We performed all over the country doing sketch. We met weekly with his sketch group, and we wrote sketch comedy, and we performed it at Second City, you name it. We performed at San Francisco Sketch Fest. And that to me was my love, because it combined 2 of my favorite things, getting to be comedic and be on stage. So, yeah, I was on Kimmel twice. Those were the fun. I was with Fred on those twice.
Dang. And I gotta ask, does it also drive you bonkers when people call comedy sketches skits?
Yes.
It's not a skit, it's a sketch. There's a freaking difference.
Yeah. It does, but that also comes from going to summer camp, which they call it skits. So I mean, I get why people do it, but it's actually sketch comedy. And it's a real art form to writing sketch comedy. One of the members of our group was a man by the name of T-Shawn Shannon, who was the head writer for Saturday Night Live for like 12 years. So yeah, so we had a lot of really good people in our group. A lot of good people.
Yeah, connections, man.
Well, we were very good friends with Sam Kinnison's family, and his brother and sister-in-law owned a theater in Upland, and we used to do. Fred and I would perform plays there. We did plays together there. We did sketch comedy there, and yeah, that was in Upland.
Well, needless to say,
Grove Theater.
Well, needless to say, you have an incredibly distinctive voice. At the start of your career, especially in voice acting or voiceover roles, did you get gigs for your specific voice, or did you try and change your voice for more generalized gigs?
A couple of things. Like it didn't benefit me for on-camera work. That was the problem. So when I was doing, the nerd in everything in the 80s, like Alan Ekian in Summer School, it was a benefit. But then when I started to expand into other roles or want to do other kinds of roles, I kept getting the same comment that he doesn't sound like he looks. He doesn't sound like he looks.
And, like H. John Benjamin.
Right. And so I started doing like voice lessons where I learned to talk like this, which eventually became Billy's dad on Billy and Mandy. But I like walked around talking like this. But this wasn't my voice. And it was really a hindrance for me in my mind. And it was my mom, rest her soul, God rest her soul, that said to me, have you ever thought about going into voiceover? Maybe that's really where you should be. And so she helped me, transition from the thought that my voice was a negative to a positive. And, when I discovered voiceover, it was like, the ugly duckling coming home to roost. In regards to the roles I do, I have I coach and teach voiceover. And one of the things I always teach people is that it's not about the voice. It's not how many voices you can do. It's how many secondary realities you can enter. Like, how do you play, excuse me, in these stories? And so the thought I had when I got into voiceover was, I go to see Robert De Niro in a movie, and you could argue that Robert De Niro is the same as in, Goodfellas as he is in Casino, as he is in The Irishman. And yet we follow him into these stories. And it's because he gets out of the way of the story, which is what I try to do. I try to enhance the story, but I always remember it's not my job to drive the story. It's my job to let the story drive me. I'm merely a vessel through which the words pass, but the words have to be informed. So thereby, you could argue that Zim and Chaos from Skylanders sound similar. But even so, they've got different wants in different locations and different settings with different people. And so you follow me into that story. So some kids that grew up watching Zim know me as Zim. Others that see Zim that are like, now in their teens go, oh, that's Chaos. So I never let my voice after the on-camera situation. I still do on-camera work. Most people don't realize I was the green grapes in the Fruit of the Loom commercials for about 5
I knew that.
Yes.
I knew that.
I was in it. I still do. I did Crazy Stupid Love. I was in Crazy Stupid. I was in The Informant. I played Matt Damon's attorney along with Tony Hale. So I still do on-camera work. But I think age has helped me settle down like my anxiety about how I sound, look, or move on film anymore.
Plus, your voice is one of the most iconic in the business.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You're very kind. It's very kind.
Honestly, this is kind of a dream come true for me. I still don't know how we get really good guests like this, but this kind of blew my socks off.
I liked your letter. I liked your email. My agent forwarded me your email, and I liked it. So
it was kind of a Hail Mary.
Yeah, I did.
So you mentioned teaching voice acting. How did that come about in the first place?
So a lot of people asked me, how do you get into voiceover? How do you do all this thing? And I had studied. So it's funny you asked that question, because when I was going through that period of like the transitioning from more voiceover than on camera. It was a really hard transition for me because when I was doing on camera, everything was like the nerd, as I said, and I didn't want to play the nerd anymore. And so that kind of limited my opportunities. And at that point, when I thought, you know, my career was over, I was introduced to a woman by the name of Diana Castle.
Ooh.
And Diana Castle coached, you know, Woody Harrelson and Marissa Tomei. She and Tony Hale, as a matter of fact. And she changed my life and the way I approach my career and the way I look at things. I make story more important than success. And she helped me to see that I was more of a performer trying to please an audience. But then what happens is if the audience doesn't react, it affects you on a emotional level. It makes you think you suck. So she explained to me there was no audience in a secondary reality. You know, our job, as she said, is to play pretend and play pretend fully. And so I spent 5 years working with her, going from being an impressor to being an expressor, being content with the stories I was telling. And based on my time with her, I thought to myself, I really liked the way she approached things and it changed my life. And that's when I decided to come up with my own kind of style based on the teachings of Diana Castle. And that has done fabulously well with a lot of my students. I mean, I've had thousands of students over the years. I mean, I've been teaching now since, well, gosh, I've been teaching for about almost 30 years. When I first started doing classes, back in the day of when the governor was running California, I used to teach extended learning courses at California State University Northridge at CSUN, but then when in an effort to save money, they cut all the extended learning classes. So I didn't have the opportunity to teach at CSUN anymore. And that's when I went into private coaching.
What do you like most about teaching?
I like to see people succeed. I like to show people that their job is not to book the job, because that's how, you know, if you look at SAG statistics, a working actor, a working voiceover actor who's successful and is doing well and supporting themselves and their family only book about 2 to 3% of everything they read for. And that's batting really high. That's a high average. So that means that we spend more time auditioning than we do actually getting to do what it is we say we do. And it occurred to me that that means if you go into the booth by yourself with your script and your light and your Pro Tools and all that stuff, that 97 to 98% of the time, you were trying to impress people that you were never going to see, hear, meet, or know. And that was no form of artistry for me. And I wanted to share that with other people that don't try to be like everyone else. Approach it, because you couldn't argue that I'm unique in the way I approach things. Yeah. Some people will say, oh, he's over the top. Maybe so. However, I just never stopped being who I am. I stopped trying to please everyone. Because if, there are people, let me put it this way, there are people who are animated by nature. You hear me talk and immediately I'm a character to you. It's just, it is, whether I'm being serious or not, you're hearing Zim or Daggett or someone,
Or Raz or Moxie.
Or Raz, oh, one of my favorites, yes, Raz. Raz I love because I don't have to yell in that game. So that's what I like to teach people, is to come up with their own creative voices. Fact of the matter is if you're auditioning for, what I was saying was some people are animated by nature, of which I'm one. Robin Williams was animated by nature. Jim Carrey is animated by nature. Jason Alexander, Michael Richards. All these people are animated by nature, and they never stop doing what it is they do to try and fit in with everyone else that's out there. And so I just never stopped approaching things the way I've always approached them since I was a kid, and it served me well.
Not to butcher a metaphor, but it's less about like the gig, it's more about finding your own unique voice.
Yeah, because most people, they'll get like an audition for like the soldier A or soldier B in a game or something, and they'll go like, "Get down, incoming." And I always say to them, well, let me ask you something. If we were to go to war tomorrow, would you suddenly start talking like this? Because the notion is that all soldiers talk that way, that they're all jarheads, but they're not. I mean, if I were in the army in a war, I wouldn't start walking around talking like this. But people forget that. They think they have to create something so outside of themselves to be entertaining or to be hireable. It's not true. Not true at all.
That's very wise. Circling back around to earlier topics, how does voice acting or voiceover roles for animation compare to voiceovers for video games?
Oh, they're very different. I mean, I approach the way I work the same, the way I approach story, but the difference is in video games, you rarely get the whole script because the script is being written as the platforms are being developed. So you're getting different parts of the script at all time. So the difference is with like animation, you're recording with the other actors most of the time, even if we're on Zoom together, which we have been for the last couple of years because of COVID. We're relating to them. We're like doing a show together. So we're playing off each other. But in video games, you know, they'll say, oh, you've got 100 lines. Oh, great. But that means an ABC take for every line. So that 100 lines is now 300 lines. And so you sometimes have to get the context from the director, like what's happening in the scene where I say this. So it's a much different process, much different. In fact, most of Psychonauts 2, I recorded right here in my booth, and the actual recording that I did in my booth is the one that was used in the game.
Oh wow!
Damn.
Yeah. So
I still need to get my hands on that game.
Such a great game.
So good.
Yeah, I love the original Psychonauts with all of my heart.
Yeah, and Psychonauts 2 is so beautiful. And you know, we did the original Psychonauts. You know, people are saying 16 years ago, but it was really actually almost 20 years ago by the time when we started to when it came out. And everybody sounds exactly as they did, you know, almost 20 years ago, which is nice.
Didn't really miss a beat in
it. Yeah.
So how did it feel to get back into that world or into the headspace, puns intended, of Raz?
It was pretty easy. I'm very lucky that I have people directing me like Chris Brown, who is probably one of my favorite people in the world, and Tim Schafer, the creator, right there with me as we laugh a lot of the time and we talk and then we go to work and then we laugh some more and we go to work. And so it was not hard at all. And especially under Chris's direction, it was really easy, really easy.
Yeah. You were involved with a lot of Double Fine productions even after the first Psychonauts, right?
Yeah, that's what's great about both Chris and Tim is that Tim is pretty loyal. I was in Brutal Legend with Jack Black, and Jack Black was on Psychonauts 2. And the way that came about is that Jack Black was a huge fan of Psychonauts 1 and had his people contact him and say, I don't care what it takes, I just want to do a voice on Psychonauts thing. And so he ended up being on Psychonauts 2 and writing the music for that one song that was amazing when we saw it. But Tim's very loyal. I mean, we love working together. We love laughing, and, we just have a lot in common. And I'm very fortunate that I'm friends with all of the creators of most of the shows that I do.
All right. Going off of that, you also voiced a lot of background characters and one particularly irritating antagonist for the Ratchet and Clank series. How did that gig come about?
That's a funny story. Which are you talking about, Stuart Zergo?
Yes, I have to applaud your performance. Like, you did a really good job of making me want to drop kick this little shit across the damn galaxy.
Stuart Zergo. Yeah, well,
outdated internet lingo.
Yes. It's funny. I'll tell you exactly how it came to be. Years ago, I was cast to do another video game for Insomniac Games, and several years prior to that booking, my first son, who's now 25 years old, he he wanted to play video games. And back then you had to go to stores to buy video games, right?
Yeah.
And so I walked into a video game store and I said, I have a 7-year-old kid. I want a game that is appropriate for his age. And so there were two. The first was Ratchet and Clank, and the second was Jack and Daxter. Which,
two of the foundations of my childhood. That and Sly Cooper.
Exactly. Sly Cooper. I think I did a Sly Cooper game too, a couple of them. But the Ratchet and Clank one is I was then hired to do a video game, and I didn't know that Insomniac even did Ratchet and Clank. And I walk in there and I see this big poster of Ratchet. I'm sorry, of Clank. And if you look closer, you realize it's a mosaic of all the characters and the weapons in the game that they put together to make this Clank poster. And I said, oh my God, you do Ratchet and Clank? Oh yeah, that's our flagship game. I go, oh my God, I'm a huge fan of the game. Oh really? What do you like about it? I proceeded to tell him every single level that I liked, every single level I didn't, every weapon that I liked, and every one I hated. And they go, wow, you really do play the game. I said, I played the game over and over and over again. From that point on, they put me in every Ratchet and Clank game after that because they knew I was such a huge fan. And not only that, when my son was 15, the 7-year-old that was now 15, he was brought in to be a tester for one of their games.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was how I got involved with Insomniac, who's always been very good to me. I just love the game. I actually play the game. I play the games that most of the ones I voice are games that I play. I'm a platform person, even though I do a lot of World of Warcraft and Hearthstone and those, which I love those games. I really don't play online. I'm more of a story mode platform person.
I'd say the same.
Yeah.
But, okay, a couple questions for that regard, because usually I get acting guests started on Shakespeare, so I think this is going to be the one. Favorite Ratchet and Clank game?
Well, I've got two. I love Going Commando and Up Your Arsenal.
Hell yeah. Well, for me, it's between Going Commando, Up Your Arsenal, and Deadlocked.
Deadlocked. Okay. Well, there's one that my son absolutely loved that I just it was too much Clank work, which was Crack in Time. Yeah. And that was just too much having to do Clank stuff. I like Ratchet. I love Clank, but Ratchet is the one that I like, just like in Jack and Daxter. It's funny, in Jack and Daxter doesn't have separate mini games. It's only all just
little bits where you platform in Jack 3, and then you have the damn Pac-Man mini game in Jack 3.
Yeah, well, I got off the Jack and Daxter bandwagon after I couldn't fly those damn ships in Jack and Daxter 2. I couldn't do it. It was just really frustrating me, and I hate getting frustrated with a video game. So
I think Jack 2's basic definition is frustrating. Because dear God, especially some of the later missions. But favorite Ratchet and Clank weapon?
Well, the Rhino, of course, because the Rhino, it just takes so long to get the Rhino in the original game.
Yeah. Without the use of the infinite bolt glitch.
Well, the bolt glitch is on the hoverboard race. I got that down packed. I get up on the
which method do you use? Which method do you use to get in there? Do you use the decoy glove or do you use the hologuise trick?
I use the decoy glove, and then I can hop up onto that thing and throw the rat. Then I rubber band the control stick down that just keeps throwing the thing at the boxes, and it takes about a day. And then I have enough bolts to get the Rhino.
I actually know of an easier method.
Okay.
At the very least, in the original copy of the game, on PS2, if you use the hologuise as you're walking up to start the race, when you start the race, it'll be glitched out, and then you can...
Yes, that is right. I do use the hologuise. Yes, that's exactly how I do it.
But then for the remaster, they fixed that, and then also broke everything else because they spent 5 minutes on it.
I'm also in the remaster. I'm the guy selling. Yeah, you got to find me in the remaster. But I have a pretty good role in that one.
Excellent.
Yeah.
But usually I use that trick, and then an easier way to do it is you don't even need to use the wrench or anything. You just use the taunter.
The taunter is, I like that. But
like if you crouch to hold yourself in place underneath the tower of boxes.
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's been so long since I've actually done the glitch. I do use the taunter because it just keeps breaking all the boxes. That's what I do. You're absolutely right. I'm not throwing.
And then you just put something. Then you just put something heavy on the controller and do it a day or so.
I totally forgot that. Yeah, it's the
and then also just pray to God that the PlayStation doesn't overheat or anything and you lose all the progress. Because if that happens, you can't do it again.
I used to have a PlayStation that would just overheat, and I took it to a guy that could fix it for like about 10 minutes. Then finally I had to get rid of it, and it just broke my heart. Because you can't play a lot of the PlayStation 2 games on any of the new consoles, which drives me crazy, but you can download via Steam some of them and play them on the if you like, there's an app on PlayStation 5 or something that allows you to play these things. I don't know how it works.
They recently updated it, and like they had Ratchet, Jack, and Sly, but then for some damn reason they took all the Sly games off, and I was pissed.
I don't know. That's another one I did this past year that was also a lot of fun. Was Lonnie Lowly in Crash Bandicoot.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I was one of the masks in that
one.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, were you the one in the trailer where they're just like, how many times have you beaten this clown? 3?
Yes, that's me.
Felt like more.
Yeah, it felt like more. That's me. Yeah.
I love that line mostly because they just acknowledged, look, guys, we know the games, these games are kind of crap, but they're not canon anymore.
Right. Oh, don't get me started on canon, because I could spend an hour talking about my dismay with Star Wars.
Oh.
We'll stay away from that subject. I've talked about it a million times, but I do not like any of the new Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, I'll just steer back to like one more video game question. So the Destroy All Humans franchise seems to be making a comeback with up-res versions of the original games. Were you called in to record new lines for Pox?
I was on the first Destroy All Humans that came out, I think, last year. It's Black Forest Games did it, and so they brought me in because they had a level that we recorded way back when, but things had changed, and they didn't include it in the new release, and I mean in the old release, and now they're putting it in the new. They put it in the new release, and so they brought me in to do a bunch of new lines, and that was fun. I think the second one is coming out, but they're just remastering it. There's no new lines that I know of or new levels in it.
One of the things that always kept it entertaining was just Pox talking shit at you the whole time.
Yeah, well, there's one of my favorite lines is, focus, Crypto. There'll be time for probing later.
Well, that was surreal.
Yeah, really. Oh my God.
Like, what do you mean, Poxy? I'm about to get this cow. Focus, Crypto.
Jeez, Pox, my head's still spinning. What are all these KGB guys after me for?
Yeah, I mean, the re-release got really nice reviews, which was nice to see, and the new levels got nice. I mean, I think that there's certain games that I think they should do more of. I think they should do more. I mean, a lot of the games that I do, I think would make great television series. Like Skylanders was a television series on Netflix, but Psychonauts would make an amazing television.
Oh, yeah.
As would Destroy All Humans, because it's so kitschy and so 1950s-esque. I think it would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
They don't ask me.
Yeah, but also then you got track records for video games and movies, so I think people will be kind of nervous about that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, getting off of the video game part,
yes.
Over your career in voice performances, you've worked with a lot of different people. Are there any actors or directors that you just absolutely love working with?
Yeah, I love working with a lot of voice directors. Like I love Chris Brown, which I said, Donna Grillo, Chris Zimmerman. They're amongst my favorite people in the world. As far as
he was on Ratchet too, right?
Who?
Chris Zimmerman.
Chris Zimmerman. It's a she. She.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. She directed the last Rift Apart.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, she directed that, but she also directed Billy and Mandy. So that's and then Donna Grillo was responsible for She directed Angry Beavers, and she was responsible for me being on Invader Zim, along with another one that called Squirrel Boy with Pamela Adlon and Kurtwood Smith. That was created by Everett Peck, who did Duckman, who sadly just passed away.
That's cool.
I slightly remember that.
Yeah. But the people I work with, you know, like people always ask me about celebrities. You know, I worked with Sheena Easton. She was great. Michael York was amazing.
Oh, wow.
Eric Idle was great. Artie Johnson. I mean, I could go on and on with like the celebrities. Weird Al was great. My favorite that I got to work with, which I fanboyed like there was no tomorrow over, was Billy Hayes, who played Witchy Poo in HR Puffin stuff.
No way!
Damn.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
Yeah, I was like a fanboy, just going, "Oh my God, I love you so much," you know. And I did like Charles Nelson Riley, who played Hoodoo, and hello, Weenie, and she laughed, and it was just so much fun. Like I said, I worked a lot with Fred Willard. Like on my shows, they would always bring Fred on my shows because they knew that we were friends and we worked together well. As far as creators, you know, I could go on and on about the people I've been fortunate enough to work with. Like I said, Tim Schafer, Mitch Schauer, Jonan Vasquez, Vivian Medrano currently, Maxwell Adams. So they were all just really good people, very good people, very kind to me.
And you don't have to name names here, but are there any that you would just rather not work with again?
Yes.
There
are people that had some egos going on in the booth, which I never understood because all we're doing is playing. So, So yes, there are some. As far as like, some companies that I've worked for, there's a couple that I won't work for again.
All right, so now that we got through all this, now I can allow myself to geek out over the Vivziverse. Okay, because I know there are going to be people on the Hell of a Boss and Has Been and Vivziverse subreddits that are going to want this story. Like, how did you come across Vivian Medrano and her work?
I really knew nothing about Vivian, to be honest with you. But I had always known in my career that eventually the kids that grew up watching my shows would one day be in position of wanting to work with the old guy. And so Vivian was a fan of Invader Zim and Billy and Mandy, and she was friends with Maxwell Adams, the creator of Billy and Mandy. And she said that she had this character she always wanted me to voice, but she had no way of getting to me. And Maxwell says, "Well, I can get to him." But it was Kellen Goff, who was my student.
Oh, he was a student?
He was a student of mine, yeah. He sent me a private message on Facebook one day and said, "Hey, there's this woman, Vivian Medrano, has got this huge following on YouTube, and she's got this show, and she really wants you to do it." And, you know, I didn't really know about it. And, you know, in those cases, I said, "Well, send her to my agent." You know, I gave him my agency information. And the beautiful part about it is that my agent and I said, "I can't do it unless it's union." And out of Vivian's own pocket, she paid for the whole show to go union. So it's all union, and it's YouTube, which is amazing. It's all union actors, and she did the right thing. And it was really, really just, she's like one amazing talent.
There is a lot of production going into like Hell of a Boss in general. I mean, I know there's been like some hiccups in the past few months or something.
Yeah, there's been a hiccup with our final episode of season 1, which, you know, I can't really get into, but it has to do with a lot of just a lot of ridiculous stuff that's out of Vivian's control. But we are going to go ahead and start releasing the episodes for season 2, which people are going to absolutely love. If you love season 1, you're just going to absolutely love season 2. And that's coming up the 30th, I believe, is when we're going to release the first one.
Nice. Well, this episode's probably going to be out a little bit later than that.
Great. So I hope you liked the first episode of season 2.
Let's hear the feature. Be sure to put a comment down there. What did you think of season 2, episode 1 of Hell of a Boss? Yeah, we've actually been trying like since the beginning of this show to try and get an interview with Vivzy because like once we had to go remote and had to do Zoom anyway, we were like, well, I mean, really, we could just send it out there and see who wants to take a chance. You know,
so Vivian, Vivian is just ridiculously slammed to the max because it takes a lot. She's running 2 crews at once and doing 2 shows, which is amazing.
Yeah.
She's doing Hell of a Boss and Has Been. So we finally finished recording for all of them. For all of it, the recording's done for what we've done thus far. She and I went to New York 2 weeks ago to meet a lot of the Broadway stars who are the stars of Hell of a Boss and Has Been. So,
wow.
Yep.
Well, then,
we're talking Tony Award winners.
Nice.
Well, then, as if we didn't already have a lot to look forward to, this sounds like it's going to be really cool.
I've seen what they've done so far on Has Been, and I sat there, mouth agape, just going, "Oh my God, this is better than anything I've ever seen on network, ever." It's amazing.
Borrow a phrase, oh crumbs.
Oh crumbs.
Okay, and on this topic, like before we leave this topic and go to like the final questions I got.
Yes.
I need your absolute candor and honesty on this because this has been a question that's been running around my mind for a long time now.
I'll do what I can.
I don't want you to break any NDAs or anything, but just like this is a really important question.
Yeah.
Are you a possum?
I am not a possum. I would expect that question from you because you're a human.
Allegedly.
Yes.
Hey, if you see if you see this the rest of the studio, we had to make a few deals with demons in order to get some sort of production value.
I really can't even answer that question unless I'm drunk because that's a drunk box.
Yep. Honestly, that is pretty much my favorite episode of season 1.
That is one of my favorite episodes, especially the thing about Hell of a Boss is for people who don't watch Hell of a Boss, they usually have a misconception of what it is. They think it's just, all about hell and sex and yada yada. But if you look at it, it's all about relationships and it's more about love than it is anything else. So
yeah,
we're
like
pretty proud of that. We're pretty proud.
Found Family with IMP or Moxie Millie,
Stolas and
Blitz.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
So yeah, there's a lot more to it than people usually expect.
Exactly. It's like I went through the same thing with Invader Zim because Invader Zim was canceled prematurely on Nickelodeon, and everyone based the show on like one of my favorite episodes, but it was very dark. It was Dark Harvest, and it was organs, and it was scary.
The one that made the news.
The one that made the news, and it was a scary episode, but it was brilliant. Everything about Invader Zim, I'm so proud of.
Yeah. So you're the first guest for our 4th season, so you get to be kind of a guinea pig test subject for the 2 big questions that we'll be asking all the guests this season.
Okay.
So, what characteristic in general do you despise most in others?
Arrogance. Arrogance. I really hate it. You know what? Let me put it another way. Entitlement. I really go nuts with people who feel entitled.
That is quite a problem.
Yeah.
And then probably the more difficult question: what characteristic do you despise most in yourself?
It's really a curse being so smart. That's really I despise that.
Preaching to the choir.
Yeah, they say ignorance is bliss, so the inverse must be true as well.
For those of us who think it's a very painful life,
especially if you're on this side where you have to actively try and find the funniness in reality.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I have to, the thing that I always have to battle is the urge to argue. To argue a point that I think that I'm right about. It's very hard for me to just let things go sometimes. I think that would be my answer.
Because for most of the people that you try to argue with, or they're trying to argue with you, they don't actually want the facts or knowledge. They really just want to try and piss you off.
Right. It's really hard to not feel the need to be right all the time, especially when you know something to be true. You've got, this desire to make people see that you're right is a thing that is pretty rampant in a lot of people, but that's the one I always have to battle. As a friend of mine said one time, it's all right to say, I don't know.
Oh, that is very wise.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a pretty good place to wrap it up. So,
right.
Richard Horvitz, everybody. We'll be
Thank
right
you,
back.
everyone. We hope you enjoyed season 2.
Woo!